Jesse Goldberg-Strasser with the Lugnuts, joined by a member of the 2015 Lugnuts, Boomer Collins. Thomas Collins III, if I remember your name right.
Yes, sir.
Boomer was a legend because not only was he a great hitter, but when he came to Lansing, I remember already talking about how you had done so many different things in your life up until then, plus you were looking at cricket. So before we even get into your most recent venture, there was delivering milk. What were all the different things that you've done?
Right out of college, my brother-in-law, he was a manager of a big landscaping company here in the Dallas area. And so after that first summer being in the GCL, after getting picked up out of Dallas Baptist, I went for work for a couple months there at the a landscaping company. Well, I was one of the drivers. Not many people had, driver's license that worked for that landscaping company. So I was one of the drivers. Well, then it kind of led me to getting my CDL, and, that venture then led into working for Oak Farms and delivering milk for the rest of the off season. And so that was a pretty cool adventure. You get to meet new people every day. You build some relationships, dropping off milk, and then you kind of go with the old stereotype of the milkman and waving at everybody and bringing in your carts of milk. So then it turned into kind of a fun little joke with all my friends.
Beyond delivering milk, you were the first baseball player I'd ever met who was also thinking about going into cricket. How was that experience?
Randomly, this guy out of the blue just contacted me about, playing professional cricket or trying to play professional cricket. I didn't even know, really what cricket was. I knew it was kind of like baseball, and I knew it was a bat and ball game. And so that kind of drew my interest. And, I was getting a little later in my baseball career, and not going as fast as I really wanted to. And so I was kind of planning for the future as well as, continuing to play baseball. And it was just kind of a different avenue to continue competing. And then when I finally got my release, or when I finally, unfortunately, received my release, I was wanting to play baseball as long as I could. But, then, things happen, you get your release, and, it's time to start real life. And I still wanted to compete. I still had, those competitive juices were still flowing. And so I still wanted to go out and use my athletic ability. And so it was just kind of by chance that guy contacted me, and he's from England, and kind of, his position in cricket was kind of like what would be kind of a bench coach or a position coach for the New York Yankees, or if the United States team, still had a major league team that went and played against different countries for a whole season. That would, kind of be his position for he'd worked for several different countries around the world. And he was looking to tap into American talent. And it was kind of cool to be the first American to kind of, play professional baseball and try to play professional cricket. So it took me to a lot of cool places. I actually went to India for about a month and played cricket over there. And so, man, it was such a cool experience. I had to, it wasn't bringing any money. So I had to, I had a wife, I had to go get a job. And so I wish I still would have tried to pursue that a little bit further, but it is what it is. I was married. It was time for me to go to work, and that's what I did. So, but it was fun while it lasted. I probably never would have gone to India ever in my lifetime if it hadn't been for, trying that out. So that was such an amazing experience.
Before we get into baseball,
yeah,
did you have a finest cricket moment?
I was playing in a local tournament back in the Dallas area, kind of an amateur tournament, and I made, it would have just been in baseball, it would just been a regular a diving catch, just a regular diving catch. I reach out, a full sail, I make, a one-handed catch or whatever, which to me was just normal. It's, the ball's in the air, you go catch it. And, to them, it was like they had never seen anything like it before. It was like something unusual, like that never happens. And so that was a cool moment for me. And then the first time I I was playing down in Houston. I was trying out for the U.S. national team, and I hit one out of the stadium, which, in baseball, terms, it wasn't that far of a hit, from, a pitcher throwing it and hitting it. It was probably about, 300 feet, but it's different with, hitting a cricket ball with a square bat. It doesn't really go as far, but to them, it was like I hit one to the moon and back. And so that was kind of a cool experience to me, was that, I hit one out of the stadium, and they were just in such shock that they'd never seen anyone do that. But to me, I was like, man, if they would see all the people that I've played with hit a baseball, they would think that this was nothing, So that was kind of cool to have those experiences.
Boomer Collins, cricket legend. They're still telling stories about you. You have played with great talent. Who stands out among all your teammates?
The best player I've probably ever played with, and, he just broke into the league last year, was probably Ryan McBroom. I mean, the guy could absolutely play, and it mind boggled me that it took him so long to make it, that he was still in the minor leagues for so long after he had been an all-star every single year. From the time that I'd played with him, he had hit over 10, 15 home runs every single year. It seemed that, you couldn't make him hit less than 300. He was just if he was up, he was, he hit for contact, he hit for power, he drove runs in, he walked. I mean, he was a complete player. He played great defense, and he was a great guy to be around. He was really cool to be around. He's a good one. Franklin Barreto, Frankie was, he's a stud. That dude, when I first got into the GCL, and he was on that team, I think I was 23, 24 years old, and he was a 17-year-old kid who just came to America, and I couldn't believe how strong he was. He would just flick the ball with ease, and it would just go. And I'm swinging as hard as I can to try to make the ball go anywhere, and he's just flicking balls with his wrist and hitting them over. And I was so impressed, with his playing style and the maturity that he showed at a 17-year-old. Being a high school coach now, I look back on when I played with Frankie at a 17-year-old. I'm like, oh my gosh, no wonder he was, he signed for whatever, and he's playing in the big leagues now. As watching 17-year-olds play now, he was leaps and bounds above anything that I'd ever seen.
There were so many guys that you played with who have now made the major leagues 5, 6, 7 years later. Freeze framing it at the time, could you have looked around and said major leaguer, major leaguer, major leaguer?
I knew Frankie was going to be a big leaguer, and I knew Ryan McBroom was going to be a big leaguer. Eventually, I just, McBroom was too good of a hitter. I knew he was going to hit his way to the big leagues. It was just when being such a late drafted pick and a first baseman at that, we were the Blue Jays had a lot of first basemen, and that were younger than him that, they paid a lot more money, and, it was just going to be win, because he was going to continue to hit. He was going to continue to be and I believe there was just a matter of time when he did it. And, the one that I knew had it in him too was Danny Jansen. He was young. I played with him in the GCL and then in Lansing as well. And I knew that, because he had such a good eye. He probably had one of the best eyes I've ever seen. He would fight off pitches. And then he would walk, and then he would hit a double the next at bat, and then he might get into him and hit a home run. And being a young kid, he hadn't matured yet into that power, into kind of his grown man strength. And, I knew it was going to be a couple off seasons until he really got into his body. Being 24 years old at the time when I was playing with him, I was bigger and stronger than he was, but I believe that he was light years ahead of me just from his mental. He had such a great approach as a 17 or as an 18-year-old kid in the GCL. And then the next year when he went to, I believe he went to Bluefield after that. And then I met up with him in Lansing the following year. his mental approach at the plate was fantastic. And he still made mistakes because he was a young kid, but man, over time, he handled pitchers so well, and it was very cool to watch him handle a pitching staff. And he learned from some great guys. He learned, Coach Snyder. He was with Coach Snyder for a long with John for a long time. I call him Coach. Now he's not manager, but he was with Snyder for so long, and he was such Snyder I think he molded Danny, and now he's doing fantastic in the big leagues. And then you run into guys like JD and Anthony Alford, who are just freak athletes. Those two guys are freak athletes. And when both of those guys made it to the big leagues, and you see their smile, you're like, man, that's the dude I remember right there. That dude's he's not going to change, man. You see those big smile from both of those guys. And those are two amazing human beings. Anthony Alford and JD, and to see them make the big leagues was so cool for me as someone who played with them. I'm like, man, that does my heart good to see those guys make it. And then Tellez, that dude can rake, and it was kind of the same thing. It was a matter of when, he had to change his body a little bit from being younger but that's just maturity. I knew he was gonna do it because same thing with Danny. He had the maturity at the plate. He knew what he was doing with his swing, and no one was going to tell him any differently. He knew his approach. He knew his swing, and that's the thing about good hitters is, they're not trying to change their swing every single day. They know what they do, and they're good at what they do, and they stick with their approach and they stick with their plan, and that's what makes them great. And that's why guys like Danny, and that's why guys like Rowdy, it was just a matter of time, and they were going to make it. It was just one of those things that once they matured and once they figured out, what the weight room was all about, it was just a matter of time before they cracked into the big leagues.
You're going through the names: Ryan McBroom, Danny Jansen, Rowdy Tellez, Jonathan Davis, Anthony Alford. We could throw in other guys, right? Richard Urania was on the team. Tim Lugnuts,
Richie. Yeah.
Boomer Collins. You're part of this offense.
Yeah.
What was it like to be a part of that offense?
Well, to me, being an older kid on that team, they call me granddad. I was kind of like a dad to those guys, and to me, I embraced that role. I wanted to be that role. I wanted to be a guy that led those guys and kind of showed them, the right way to play the game, to play the game hard, to play the game 100% all the time, and to leave nothing out there. Do what you've got to do every single day, and attack each day with a professional mindset. It's because it wasn't a game. It's not just a game. When you're getting, it's a business. And you've got to attack it like it's a job, and you've got to show up to work, and you got to show up to weights every day, and you've got to hit, and you've got to mold your game every day. And those guys aren't just great baseball players, man. They are awesome guys to be around. That Lansing Lugnuts team in 2015 was so fun to be around. And when I got promoted and I went to Dunedin, it was sad leaving those guys. I wanted to be promoted, but just because I'm later in my career, I wanted to keep moving up. But it was sad to see those guys. And then when I got sent back down right after the All-Star break for a couple weeks, I think there was some injuries or something. I get moved back down. It was so cool to see those guys and where they had been, after I had been gone for a month or so. And it was like nothing had stopped, and I even forgot guys, Mays, Tim Mays, that dude, man, he was, for me, he was like the biggest surprise. He had great stuff, was he going to figure it out on the mound? And he was an unbelievable teammate. A guy that you liked talking to, a guy that you liked having a conversation with. And it was so cool to see him make it, man. I was like, Tim, that is awesome. Like I was so excited for these guys to make it. It was like I made it to the big leagues. Like I feel like I invested in all these guys, while they were in Lansing, while they're in Dunedin. We played in the GCL together, and to see those guys make it, it did my heart great.
Have you kept in touch with any of the guys?
I've over social media, I've kept in contact with a couple of them. I don't want to be one of those crazy people who's like always texting and always, oh man, like living, I'm just living vicariously through them on the sidelines. One of my friends, if I'm out or something and somebody starts talking about so-and-so in the big leagues, you're like, oh yeah, I played with that guy. He was 20-year-old, doing crazy stuff, acting like a fool in the locker room. Like, oh yeah, I know him. You kind of have that feeling, and yeah, I was like a dad to that guy. So, but I'll text him, man, proud of you, thinking about you, keep tearing it up. I was actually in contact with McBroom the other day. And so, for me, I'm just glad they remember who I am.
How could they forget? Do the players that you coach, do they know who you played with, who you know?
Well, I try to use, when I'm coaching, I try to use those guys as examples for a lot of things. By the way that you attack every day. When you're going through a full season, you learn a lot about somebody. And I use a lot of examples. I use the McBroom example a lot. Is the guy just hit all the time. He knew what he was doing. He didn't. In my opinion, he didn't deserve to be in Lansing. I thought that he should have been in AAA after his first year in the GCL. I just like, this dude is unbelievable. No one could get him out. And then after we were in Vancouver, the guy just hits. And then in Lansing, the guy just hits. And so I was like, guys, you can't control, and that's kind of what I say is you can't control where you're at right now. You can't control what's going on. You just got to show up. You got to do your job, and you got to keep getting better every single day. And that's what he did. And I think he's still doing it and has proven it because he's playing in the big leagues. And I think he continued to do it with the Yankees. He was tearing up the AAA with the Yankees for 2 years, and he never got that call up. It happens. But, from an outsider looking in and knowing who Ryan McBroom is, you look at him and go, yeah, he probably is upset that he's not in the big leagues, but you can't tell. He shows up to work every day, he hits, and then he has a great time in the locker room with guys, and then he tears it up when he does his job when he gets out on the field. And that stuff is so cool to watch, and it's so valuable for high school kids to understand that. And then, you talk about with high school kids about guys, the people that are playing, and you guys all have ambitions to go play college baseball. You have ambitions to go play professional baseball. Those kids that are coming across from Latin America, they're hungry. They are hungry to play this game. And if you're not willing to put in the effort and stay in here after practice and hit and live in the weight room, I go, you're going to get passed by, because these kids come over, they're coming over to work and to eat. They're coming over to feed their families. They're hungry. And so, man, it is, there's so many valuable lessons that I was taught, playing professional baseball or playing baseball in general, that I get to share, on a daily basis with kids.
The Ryan McBroom story that I heard, and I'm not sure how true this was when Rowdy Tellez was promoted, and I told McBroom, you're staying here, so just go out and win the league MVP award. And then he did. Do you have any favorite stories or memories from your time in Lansing?
One of the coolest things, and it was while I was on the Phantom DL. I was coaching first base. And that was a whole another thing in itself. But I got a lot of, I wanted to attack that in a way as like, hey, there's positive that can come out of this. And, you keep a positive attitude, and you continue to work every single day while you wait. And, that's kind of what the manager and all the people that were around there just say, like, hey, work while you wait. You can't control this situation. And then whenever I finally got the chance to play, I think it was a month into the season, that first game, I got up my first at bat. I think I had a home run to left field or something, and it was such a special it was such a special moment to me, you know, especially when I was rounding second base and I go on, I'm shaking hand at third base. And then I look into the dugout and, you know, all my guys are on the top row, you know, and they're going crazy. And to me, that was so special to me because, man, like this was my, you know, this was what I thought, this is my career. I'm going to be a big leaguer from the time I was a little kid. And, you know, you're an older guy, you're on the Phantom in low A, you know, you're coaching first base every day. You know, it's a long season, but you're only a month into it, and you're working your butt off. You just want someone to care. You know, you're in your own emotions, and I try not to be, but you know, you are sometimes. And then you get in there, you get your opportunity, and you're successful. And then the cool thing to me was not the home run. It was my teammates' reaction. That's what I remember. You know, I don't remember what pitch it was. I don't remember how far it went. I know it went to left field. But what I remember was just looking into the dugout and while I'm rounding third base and seeing those guys fired up for me, like that was so cool to me, you know, especially as an older guy. Man, I look back and I'm like, man, that was truly special that those guys cared about me being successful. And I think it was because I tried to dive into them as much as I could. And so that was kind of cool to get that feedback back.
Love it. Speaking with Boomer Collins from baseball, the cricket, and a coaching. Now, baseball had long been a dream of yours. I do not think that beekeeping has very long been a dream, but it now is the dream. And Boomer's Bees, you've got to check it out on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram. So in watching your very first video, you were explaining how you got into it, that you found yourself sucked into that rabbit hole and you were watching videos. Had you ever, before this happened, had you ever considered beekeeping?
No, not a chance at all. I mean, I hate creepy, crawly things that fly. I mean, if there's a wasp or there was anything flying, everything to me was going to sting me, you know? And so up until this point, up until about 2 years ago where I really started studying, I was scared to death of insects, you know? Like I wasn't the little kid, like picking up insects, eating them, doing all that kind of stuff. Like I was like, no, I'm not messing with those things. But man, like I said, I went down this wormhole 2 years ago and kind of got sucked in, and I found a commercial beekeeper and this other guy that was kind of doing the same I'm doing now, just kind of beginner beekeeper. And I got hooked on two of their channels and kind of followed their journey all the way through. And then I went to my first beekeeping class, which was exhilarating. You know, when you open up a hive and you hear the hum of bees in a hive, man, it's until you experience it, it's hard to explain. And then I went to the Texas Beekeepers, I think it was like the Central Texas Beekeepers Association, like convention. It was huge. There was like, 50 or 60 speakers over this whole day. It was like 7 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the evening, just speakers. And then, you got to, learn how to light a smoker. Then you learn like all the steps on what you need to do, how you need to do it. You could order all your equipment. I mean, it was a cool little day convention. And that just kind of, sucked me in even more. And then this fall, I was just like, I'm doing it. All right. Like I've saved up money, like we're doing it. Like I just got to dive in, or I'm just going to keep watching YouTube videos and not do anything about it. And so I got on the internet one day. I got out, I'd already been saving up money because I knew I wanted to do it. I go, nope, now I'm going to buy it right now so that I have to do it. And so I got on the internet, I bought it. Bought 2 nucleus hives, and then they finally came in. You have to wait, because they have to, if you winter, if you go through winter, and then they have to come out, they have to get stronger. So then they separate them, and then they sell, the surplus hives. And so, I'd researched where who sold the best hives, who had the, because there's a lot of the, mites and diseases that kind of have started, coming up in, in the bee world or in insects. And so I wanted to get, a good batch, my first batch. And so I did my research and found a place in Texas that had been like varroa mite resistant since 2003. And so I was kind of like, yeah, let's do it. And so, man, I jumped head first, and, I wanted to follow along with the guys that I've been following and kind of document and hire somebody else to join into and show everybody the mistakes that I'm going to make and be real with it.
I know you've got your mother's support at the very least because I saw that she had painted. You gave her the shout out for Dallas Baptist and for Texas. So the
Yeah.
Patriots, the Longhorns are represented.
Yeah.
What was your family's reaction when you said, guess what I'm going to do?
Well, so when this whole process started about 2 years ago, they were just like, "What? You can't even be around a wall. You can't even be around a bug, much less a whole colony of bees. And so or a whole hive of bees. And so I don't think they really understood how serious I was until I went to that bee convention. I went and took a class. My brother-in-law went with me to take a class, and then I went to that convention there. I think they were kind of like, yeah, he is, he's pretty serious about this. And so, and then especially when I bought them, they were like, well, here we go. And now everyone in my family is like, man, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, we can't wait till there's honey. Like my coaching, my coaching staff that's down in Austin, and then I'm getting random text messages and messages like, man, I can't wait for you to get honey. I want to buy some. And so, man, it's been a really cool experience. One, when I posted the YouTube video, and then, two, it's been kind of a cool experience. Like everybody's like, oh man, Boomer, like he's just into his bees or whatever. And so now they're kind of like, man, well, now I want some honey. It's kind of like they've completely flipped once they kind of saw the whole process.
Now, I'm asking from ignorance because I have no idea. Is it difficult to get that honey?
Well, from all the things that I've seen, I haven't had my first honey crop yet. But you let them, do their thing. That's one of the reasons that I picked bees is because, they can survive on their own. They don't really need my interference to produce what they need to produce. And so, I'm not going to take anything from them this year. I'm going to let them build them to get strong. I want them to build up. But next, you let them come out of winter, and then they go through the spring flow, and you let them have 2 boxes and whatever they need to support their own colony, and then you take all the excess. So I don't want to dig into stores to where they starve out and die, but then you take kind of what the honey is. It's just excess of what they have, and that's kind of what beekeepers do is they take all the excess, and you just continue to pass on and take them off. And so for me, I'm going to have to go, through the process as a beginner. I'll ask a lot of questions. There's a lot of people that I follow. There's a lot of, I'm in 2 beekeeping associations here in Texas. And so, man, I'm asking questions all the time and trying to find out the best practice so that, I believe it's something, 80 to 85% of all crops that we eat here in America are pollinated by bees. And so, I feel like I'm doing my part to help this country out. So that kind of makes me feel good as well.
Now, bees have been in the news recently. Do you have any thoughts on the Asian murder hornet?
What I've seen so far, I can't tell if they're colonies that are just reproducing at a rapid rate and they're moving around, or if it's just a couple of them that they found, in the Washington State area. But I did read that, the bees are protecting their colonies and it's kind of crazy how they're doing it. They're melting them. They're kind of getting them and creating a ball around them and producing so much that they're melting these hornets at such a rapid rate. But no, man, everything that I read, it says that, man, they're pretty vicious creatures.
In watching that first video, one of the most fun things for me was all the music. It was such a fun produced video. How much of a blast did you have putting that together?
So I had a great, and so my first year of teaching, right when I got into teaching, I got put into this teaching graphic design. I had like a technologies applications certification or whatever. And so I got put into this, no clue about iMovie. I had no clue about Photoshop, but I'm having to teach kids about all these things. I had no clue. And so I kind of had to teach myself. So over this, 4-year period since that time, I was like, man, I remember how to do this. Like this is kind of cool. And so, you find the music, you put it in. And so hopefully I'll continue to get better at editing these videos. But as a first one, I was pretty happy with how the first one turned out. So hopefully I can sprinkle some more music in there.
Boomer, go ahead. You can promote Boomer's Bees.
Yeah, follow me on Facebook is Boomers Bees, and then my YouTube channel's Boomers Bees. No, actually, they're all Boomers Bees, but I have Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube all at Boomers Bees. BOOMERS BEES.
I love it. Following your journey. Lugnut Slugger in 2015. Boomer Collins, thank you very much for your time.
Man, Jesse, thank you so much for having me. And man, I just thank you for all the Lugnut fans. Man, you guys made it a fun couple months spent in Lansing. And, I really enjoyed, I didn't really know much about Lansing before I came. And man, you guys opened my eyes, and man, it's such a beautiful place to be.
Go nuts, Lugnuts, go nuts!